Everybody ready?
Yes.
We're going to call a special meeting of the Detroit Planning Commission. It's a work session for June 18th, 2026 to order. Roll call, please.
Mr. McGarry?
Here.
Mrs. Ehrlich?
Here.
Mr. Emmerich?
Here.
Mr. Westmeyer?
Here.
Mr. Wolke?
Here.
Mayor?
Here.
Mr. Titterington? There's a quorum.
Okay. Welcome everyone who's in attendance. The way we're going to handle the meeting today, and this is going to be one of many meetings, we predict, that we'll be going through the UDC with the consultants and with staff. Then we're going to probably have field questions from the Planning Commission. And depending upon the time allowed, we will try to get comments in from everyone in the public. The only reason I said is we want to hold our schedule from 4 to 6 o'clock. I think we told everybody we'd be done about 6. That's going to be a long haul. I certainly do not want to go any longer than that. But one of the things we'll have to do is, as we go through the meeting, let the consultants give us a review and then talk about the schedule for the next couple of review meetings. Because I'm sure we're not going to get to all the comments we're going to have, and then after today's meeting, you're going to probably have additional comments. So we'll have to take it one step at a time. But as we proceed, check your calendars and see what July and August look like. Right off the bat is I don't think you said that we do not have anything on the agenda for next Wednesday, right?
That is correct.
We have a meeting scheduled. What I'd like to do is meet at that meeting to continue their discussions, as far as this Planning Commission. And so either we can decide now or at that meeting look to see what the future, schedules look like. I'm sure people have vacations.
I will not be here.
I will not be here.
Next week?
I will not be here next week.
Okay, that's right. That's correct. Okay. Well, let's evaluate that when we, get through the first part of this, and then we'll go from there. Tim, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to start by giving kind of an overview of where we were and how we got to where we're at today. So I won't go through my memo. I know you all have it as part of the packet, but just to highlight some points. In the beginning, the original comprehensive plan was adopted in 2005, and the zoning code, the original zoning code was adopted in 1999. I wish I was that young, and I feel like that's not that old, but it definitely is. They definitely ran their useful life of that. So in response to that, the Planning Commission, we hired American Structure Point. They came in and did the comprehensive plan for us. The comprehensive plan essentially sets the goals and the visions of where the city grows and how to get there. And then the zoning code is the enforcement piece of that to set standards so we can get to that point and achieve those goals. And so a lot of time and effort have gone into this process. We've taken essentially 3 codes, the sign code, the subdivision regulations, and the zoning code, and put them together as one. And so a lot of the issues we found is putting them together, you have multiple definitions. Some of them contradict, some do not. They're defined differently in those various codes. So we had to go through and mark all those items out. So we did that, and then some of the items that were outdated, we had to bring up to speed with the current regulations, with state law changes, things of that nature. So it's been a lot of time, effort, and energy put into this, and I'll introduce the structure point here in a little bit. But they did the lion's share of the work and provided a lot of direction on how this should flow and be wordsmithed together. I do want to point out, like we pointed out in the memo, there are some items that we still have to work on. A lot of them come, I'll just point them out, the nonconformity section. We have that, I think, telecommunication facilities, we're still working out. There's a handful of items that we need to work with Grant on, as well as our consultant. So we are not expecting any recommendation by any means tonight. I'm not even sure that we'll be ready for a public hearing to be set tonight. Tonight's goal is to hear where we're at in the code, how the code is structured, what we're proposing, and then there will be changes. So what you have in front of you will change. We will be providing supplemental information after we hear a lot of input from the Planning Commission and members of the audience. and you'll get another draft. We'll call it a supplemental draft, and then those drafts will be highlighted basically with red strike throughs for language changes. So I just want to be crystal clear about that. We're not asking for anything at this point in time. We do expect this to have multiple meetings to vet this so we can get the best possible UDC we can get for the city of Troy. So that's kind of where we're at tonight. And I will now turn it over and introduce Matt O'Rourke from American Structure Point, who has been with us on the comprehensive plan, the Parks and Rec plan, and the zoning code, so you may recognize him from previous studies. So
yeah, certainly recognize a lot of familiar faces in the room tonight. So great to see everyone again. Just very quickly, we were going to provide just a high-level overview of the comprehensive plan, really more how it ties to the zoning code. Certainly presented that over the years as we've been working. We'll do a project overview of the code itself, what we're calling Unified Development Code. Tim mentioned those 3 chapters, and so instead of zoning code, we call it Unified Development Code because now it incorporates all those different pieces. And there's a lot of really great reasons to do that. Most of all, efficiency. I think, especially when we're writing codes, we want one set of definitions, things like that. And David will be explaining a little bit more of that. He'll be going into the UDC structure, high level and some detail level content. In particular, some of the things that we found as we've done this over the years that are one of the ones that folks are really interested in, things like setbacks, lot dimensions, those kind of things that we deal with day to day. And then we'll talk about some of the other pieces as well. Then closing questions, happy to answer all those. I will say, programming note, if at any point you want us to stop, you'd like to ask a question in the middle of the presentation, please feel free, jump right in. There's no need for you to hold that question to the very end of the proposal.
Quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
Is this something that communities across the country are doing? Is this kind of a normal thing that's happening right now?
In terms of rewriting your standards in general, or the UD, like combining it?
A combined unified code.
Yeah, this is a trend, I'd say, 20 years now? It started about 20 years ago?
It's really strengthened about 10 years.
Yeah, the last 10 we've been asking for more.
Behind in doing this.
Not really. There's lots of communities that are doing this now. I think sometimes it takes a while to get traction to see the benefits of combining the codes, but yeah, it's definitely, I would say, the majority of our clients are going to this sort of style of ordinance.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. And so with that, regarding the comprehensive plan that was adopted by the city, it's a policy document. It lays out plans for the city, including how it ties to the zoning code. There's a future land use map, and we developed these character classes as part of that document. Those are what gets translated into the zoning districts in the UDC. And so there's some very important ties there. The comprehensive plan sets the policy direction where we'd like to see certain types of uses go, and some idea of what that should look like, what should be, but the zoning code, and Tim mentioned this, I think he did a better job than I will, saying this is the enforcement arm. So we know we want single-family homes, for instance, in a certain area, single-unit dwellings. I shouldn't say single-family for legal reasons, I forgot. That we essentially, we know where they want to go. Now the code is basically saying, all right, here's the very specifics of what that should look like, as opposed to the more general statements that are typical of a comp plan. Something that was very unique in the comp plan that we developed as part of that process was what we called the close-knit factor. And that was the idea that we kept hearing repeatedly from the community over and over and over again. We know we're going to grow. We don't want to lose that close-knit feeling we have, knowing our neighbors, knowing where we're going, seeing each other at our local parks. So there's a unique piece of this UDC that we've never written before to help implement that. So we're going to spend some time on that this evening. I already mentioned the zoning to future land use to zoning. Micro units, that was something that was a recommendation in the comprehensive plan. That was a high-level recommendation. It was a way to provide young folks maybe ownership opportunities or workforce folks affordable housing. We've now defined that more specifically, so we know where it should go in terms of zoning. We know what the size it should be, those kind of things. Spent a lot of time on parking, and this is not something that, this is probably another similarity we see with a lot of folks. Parking was overbuilt for years, especially in big box retail areas. When I used to work on Tim and Austin's side of the table, it was basically we're designing for the day after Thanksgiving because of Black Friday sales, all that stuff. And the world's changed. Amazon has changed the world in that way. So we're seeing a lot of parking reductions, a lot of less demand. Even the developers are asking for less. So those are the kind of things when we go through a code update like this, and we look at the goals of the comp plan, that's how we're trying to tie those together. Same thing with accessory dwelling units and other things that were mentioned in that comprehensive plan effort. There's some very specific critical path strategies. Just as a quick reminder, in our comprehensive plans, critical path strategies are what we think need to be implemented near term, 5 years or less. These are the strategies that bubble up to the surface. We had a few that are relevant, develop those standards around all the creative housing types, so micro units, all the things I just mentioned, mixed use standards, refining the zoning and building regulations to create incentives to do the things we want to do in the comprehensive plan by good codes as opposed to necessarily financial incentives, including encouraging downtown micro unit creation, more units infilling the second, third stories, downtown buildings, things like that. And then number 5, critical path strategy 5, continue to plan the use of the former industrial areas near the Great Miami River where all those old concrete buildings are coming down, coming up with standards and ways to help encourage those redevelopment in a way that developers can look at our code and just say, yes, this makes sense to us. And so the standards were sort of developed with these high-level principles in mind. And so there's a lot more to a zoning code, obviously, in that, but this is how the effort specifically ties to what we put in the comprehensive plan. So big picture stuff, big picture goals. We want to just kind of refresh everyone's memory on those as we start to think about how the ordinance starts to implement them. And just as a quick fun reminder, we had a lot of steering committee meetings, a lot of public engagement. We very purposely, in all those meetings during the comprehensive plan and since, with subsequent steering committee meetings, asked a lot of zoning questions. That's one of the benefits of knowing we were going from one effort right into the other. We asked a lot of questions. We talked a lot about zoning. Some of those we actually had interactive polling efforts. We said, where do we want landscape standards? Where do we think buildings should look like? We did a lot of that throughout this process. So it's not just us as a consultant sitting here saying, hey, here's what we think belongs in your code. Now, we asked a lot of questions of the community as we went through this process and until we got really into the meat and developing the standards. And then just for fun, we attended a few strawberry fests, made sure we talked to the community so it wasn't just closed door type meetings, talked about these concepts with them, and then there's that handsome devil there in the strawberry suit getting people over to the booth to come talk to us. So with that, I will turn it over to Mr. David Baird. He's going to walk you through code in more detail.
So one point why David walks up is you talked about the stakeholder meetings. We actually had 14 groups, and it was a while ago. It's the only reason I'm bringing this back up, that we had committees. So there was 14 groups that contained between 5 and 8 members, and then one member from that group stayed on our steering committee. So we worked with them throughout the process, and then just to show that we did talk about going to the Home Builders Association, so I want to make sure we didn't forget about them. When we had a code that we felt was ready enough to present to them, we will go back to them and present that as well. So I just wanted to make that note.
Yeah, so thanks for that, Tim. Actually, the list of the advisory committee members that are up on the board there, put a slide up there for you as we went through that process, and they shifted over to the zoning portion. I'm going to move back a few slides here. Oh, I think I'm going the opposite direction. Okay. So really some of the goals, and Matt's already hit on some of these things, but as well as Tim has, but we're really mainly consolidating 3 different ordinances, which is a lot of different work: the zoning, the subdivision regulations, and the sign. We wanted to make sure we're compliant with state and federal law, and we want to make sure the code is user-friendly for the staff and the public. There's a lot of charts, graphics. We try to make this as easy to understand as we possibly could. So we created regulations to also ensure that it ties to the comp plan. Matt did a great job of explaining how those two go together, and it's really important because when we do a lot where we're doing a comp plan, we go right into the code. We always view the comp plan as like part of the public engagement for the code project. So that's really important to us. So that way when we get into the more technical code portion, we feel like we already have some of that policy. So I talked about the advisory committee, I talked about city staff, talked about the legal counsel. Now we're here at Planning Commission. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that the people above, legal counsel, city staff, advisory committee, are done with this project, but we are now at the Planning Commission stage. Jim in his remarks earlier talked about having multiple meetings. What we would envision is, this is the first meeting with the Planning Commission. but we would like to, and this is what we typically do, give a pretty, a month as far as a comment period, and then we would be able to take those comments, make edits as necessary, and then come back to you. That's just an idea for your thought process, but I thought I'd go ahead and just throw that out. And then, of course, it goes to the City Council and their process through committees. We already talked about the advisory committee members. So within our UDC process, now, I know that word UDC is, as you mentioned, maybe new to a lot of people. When we started this project, it was just a zoning code rewrite, and the sign code was with that. As we started going through it, we noticed that there were some real issues with the subdivision regulations, both functionally and the problems with contradictions between that and other ordinances. So at that point, the city made a decision to consolidate those and move forward with the UDC. And so then we also have, at this point, the annotated outline, and then we go through that. So in the drafting, we went through introductory provisions and zoning districts, land uses, site subdivision standards, and the admin nonconformities definitions. That's the method that we go through. Then we have a revision and review of the code draft, public hearing draft, and final code presentation and adoption. So then, when we talk about the annotated outline, the code audit, so in this is like a big table of contents, if you will. It tells you about kind of where it was on the left is what the new sections will be, and then on the right is where they currently were. This is helpful both for the public, for staff, for everyone, so that they can take a look and see, well, okay, what was in the old section, now I know what it is in the new section. So one of the things we really noticed in the code was, was that there was a lot of different terms for the same thing. So what we create in this process is what we call a land use adjustment chart. And in this, what we're doing is we're looking to see that they function the same way, they're similar the same way, and then we group them in the code. And what we find by doing this is that almost always the code is too prohibitive, because we will find that there will be land uses like hobby shop will be permitted in one district, and leather goods and luggage will be permitted in another one. When you think about it, these function all the same way. Whether it's a gift shop or a florist, people are coming to the location, they're parking their car, they're walking to it, and then they're leaving. If it's permitted in one district, why is it not permitted in another district? The other issue is it becomes very difficult for staff to interpret this. For example, florists and gift shops are a great example. Well, there are a lot of shops that have both flowers and gifts, right? So we're put in this position or the staff is put in this position of trying to figure out what the primary use is for two things that really function the same way. So this is one of the biggest improvements we believe from the code, and we believe it's going to lead to some enhanced development opportunities, and will take a lot of the problems out of the code that you have today.
Just for further context, we had over 320 different use types, and some of them weren't even defined. Mm-hmm. We have merged that into like 86 new use types, and every one of those has a definition at the end of the code.
Yeah, and that's a very important point, Austin. Having a definition for each code, each code is very important. I was asked one time, well, what does this term actually mean when you look at it? And without a definition, it really is open to interpretation. So the definitions for the land uses are very, very important. And it becomes almost impossible when you have that many different types of things that are really the same thing, or function the same way. These are just a couple of other examples. We have a full document called the Land Use Adjustment Chart, but I'm just giving you a few little areas. But this was a key important part. So the structure, we organized this intentionally in a way that is very intuitive to the average person. Now, it may be a little bit different, or it is a little different from the way the code is today, but I want to go through and kind of explain why we're doing what we're doing. Up front, the introductory provisions is just very much what the law is, the jurisdiction, applicability, very, very basic things. So it's very short. The zoning districts gets into the heart of what is permitted and what land in what zoning district. If you're the casual person who needs to use this code once every 10 years, you can go to that and find that pretty quickly. And then tables and graphs. And then we go into different use standards. One thing that was really important for your code, and is really, really well defined, and we spent a lot of time working, Austin and I did on, was the accessory and temporary use regulations. So that's a full chapter. A lot of times when we do codes, it's not a full chapter, but you have a lot of different policies in that. So we've integrated that. They're charts. We have the site standards. We brought in the environmental management. I'm going to go through all of these, but the main key portion here, or the main key point, is that we start with what is the casual user or the most just average citizen looking for, which is what's permitted in my zoning district, and that's at the top in the zoning districts. As you go in, it gets more technical, and then you go into more of the definitions, the enforcement, nonconformity things, which obviously get more technical. So the introductory provisions, I already kind of went through that. I'll move through. Sorry if you can't see this slide too well, but these are what are the new zoning districts, both what we call the overlay and the planned unit development. Now, to create these new zoning districts, what we did is we looked at the comp plan, we compared that to what the previous zoning classifications are, and then we created new zoning districts. So some of these are consolidated districts. The ones that we've consolidated are very small, minute differences, and we always look at this as we start when we're consolidating to think about to make it more permissive, not less or not more restrictive. Because again, for development reasons, that's a good way to go. Now, that is just kind of a general overview for it, but that's one of the big issues. The idea here is, if you'll notice, there's a lot of comparison between the far left column, which is the comp plan character classes, and the far right, which is the current UDC zoning classifications. It's not exactly, but the idea is if one character area should equal one zoning district, is kind of our theory behind it, because a zoning district's supposed to feel or look a certain way. And that's kind of the same way. That's why we went to such lengths in the comp plan to create those. So these are, again, these are the business districts. The previous course was the residential. This is your existing zoning map. One thing that staff is working on right now is to get the new zoning map. That was something that this new zoning structure is something we definitely want you guys to look at and comment about. And then at that point, we'll have, Austin is going to be creating the zoning map itself. So in that, we have, for the zoning districts, we have the purpose statements. A lot of people kind of glaze over that, but it is important because it ties to what's the reason for this. How does this help the city? How is this an area that is necessary? Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Back to that slide that you just had up there.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere in the text later on, they talk about land to be annexed. As it's annexed in, it will become zoned under the District of Open Space and Conservation, OS.
Mm-hmm.
But the counter to that, there's in the paragraph description, it says not intended to be intensely developed for residential, commercial, or industrial use.
Mm-hmm.
Is that kind of
Publicly appropriate and is not
the
intended.
purpose of the annexation?
Well, the reason we as a default, put in a zoning district, as I have seen in the past where a city will annex a piece of property and then they don't classify it as a zoning district. And, it's best to have each, to have a zoning district classified.
I agree with that.
Yeah, and the reason we start with the OS is it is the most prohibitive. So if someone wants to then rezone it, they can go from there. But it wouldn't make sense to do it the other way, because then if it weren't specified in the annexation documents, then you might get something that you didn't want to have. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I know it's difficult to where you want to bring it in without causing some potential conflict down the road. It just caught my eye that,
Yeah, and
it's brought into the city for development, not for,
yeah, and I do get your point as to why you're doing that. I mean, that's something that can be, we can look at that but that's kind of our default. It's really a mechanism to make sure that every parcel has a zoning district.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
I'd say, think of it more like a fail-safe.
Yeah.
Should you annex something and then maybe the zoning not work out for whatever reason, it's already in the city and you haven't assigned it a zoning district, it goes to this one by default.
yeah.
That's the whole point.
I think it makes sense to put it in somewhere. I just, I didn't know if I was missing something along the line.
Nope.
Yeah, sure.
That's manageable.
Yeah. So there are purpose statements. This is just for every single zoning district. The permitted uses, when you look in these tables, here, you'll see we have a double dash, we have a US, or we have a P. The double dashes mean prohibited, the P means permitted, and the US means with use standards. Now, use standards, that term means it's permitted, but there are additional requirements that are necessary for it to be allowed and to be permitted. So if, for example, where it says permitted multi-dwelling residential, by right you could do that in the MR district. But if you were to have townhouse, you can do it, but again, there are additional standards. Some of those standards may, and in the case of some of our business districts, they can be things like maybe they have to be so many distance from a residential use, things like that. So there are these additional standards, and those additional standards are later after you see the charts. So it's really important to understand what those double dashes, P and US. Any questions on that?
Not necessarily this, but I have a question right before this. We call out, you're going over permitted uses. We call out prohibited uses. Actually, like in our document.
Oh yeah, actually in the text.
In the text. So I guess my question is, I don't know if this is the staff, is the prohibited uses, are there new additions to that, or are those the continuation of what was there previously?
Well, so some of those prohibited uses include things like adult use cannabis operators that we had exclusions for in the old version. So that was a way for us to show the new prohibited uses. So yes, there was some additions. One of those you'll see is tattoo parlors has been moved to prohibited. There's a lot of reasons for that. It's currently only permitted in the M2 light industrial district, for example. And to be honest, we do not have much commercial and industrial land, for example. So that's why that particular component was added to the prohibited uses. There's also manufactured homes. We kind of chatted a little bit before this that we're going to be making a tweak to that. There's a difference between a manufactured home, a modular home, and a mobile home. The intent was really mobile homes being prohibited. So we're going to make some tweaks on that prohibited uses list, so kind of stay tuned a little bit with some supplemental information.
Yeah, I guess I just like updates on what's added and what's subtracted, just so
Gotcha.
Moving forward.
Yeah,
we're happy to.
So that's a good point. Any draft that we make, we call them red line edits, and there are actually some that have occurred since we sent it out. We've just kind of got a running list, and we were thinking, I'm not sure exactly when we'd send the next out, but we try to do that periodically. That's something we probably need to discuss as to how periodically it would be. But we always show from this point on for the Planning Commission and then the City Council drafts, we don't just make the change, we make it in that red line format so you can see that.
That's kind of the same question I had.
Yeah.
I mean, this is 400 pages. I just got started.
Sure,
I'm
understand.
about 5 pages in.
Sure.
Are there the changes, are they noted in red? How will we know what the changes are?
Like, changes from this point will be noted in red.
From this point,
Yeah.
but from the old one
So,
to this, how will we know what the changes
Yeah,
are?
it was hard. We tried to address the major changes in the memo that was submitted. So that was our first attempt. It's really hard to say this is what we had and what we have now because there's multiple codes being put together. So it's hard to say, hey, we'll redline this and we'll show it over here, and they're in different sections of each code. So while it may have been addressed in one section in the old code, but in the UDC it might be addressed in 3 different sections just because of the way it's laid out. So it was hard because it is a brand new code that we're putting together, maximizing codes to give you like a 1-for-1.
But, I mean, one thing we have done with presentations is go even further into what those changes are. But I think Tim's point is really good, which is there would be so much red when you're consolidating a district. It would be almost impossible to see it. But our goal is to highlight to you what are the substantial changes. That could be, at the next Planning Commission meeting, that could be something that could be even more highlighted than in the memo. I think my experience in doing this for the last 10 years is that when we start kind of showing the code, it's best to talk about the structure and the form and to understand why we've done what we've done, and then go into the little small nuggets of information. Does that make sense?
Yep, that's fine.
Yeah.
Kind of, I was piggybacking on what Jordan was asking. So.
Yeah, okay, sure. So again, I already showed this slide, the land use. These are just examples of it. Again, this makes it so, I cannot emphasize how much easier this makes it for staff. I have been in Austin's position, Tim's position, where somebody calls and the question they ask is, can I do an automobile repair shop? Just a small one, and they describe it, they look at the definition in the GC district. You get a lot of calls like that in the public sector, and when it's in this text-heavy format, and there are these little clarifiers and everything, it is very difficult to just answer it right on a dime. But now in this table, it becomes so much easier. So you could say, yes, but there are additional standards. And a lot of times, people just want to know generally, can I do it? And then they can come in the office and talk about the details. But I used to get those calls a lot. And the table format, I've done it, I've administered it when it was just in text, and I've administered it when it was in the table, and it's just so much easier in the table. So again, there is a learning curve with it, but once you get used to it, believe me, it's so much easier. So we heard, I know there's been discussion here recently about gas stations. They are termed in the code as automobile fuel dispensing stations. And so I put that up here, just staff requested that because I know there's been a lot of discussion. In the draft as it's written today, it's permitted as an accessory structure, so it's not permitted by right as a primary structure. And then Austin, Tim, if you want to talk more about, because I know there have been there's been talk about that recently, and you would know more about that.
Yeah, so we're a part of a few communities that have done moratoriums on gas stations. And to be really honest, we have 20, okay? And when we compared our gas station ratio to the available commercial land, it was really shocking. So we wanted to start thinking outside of the box. We talked to some partner municipalities, other zoning professionals, and really we decided to kind of mimic Tip Cities. And this is the idea is the gas station would then become accessory to like a Kroger, for example, or a Walmart, where you have that large-scale retail use, and then the gas station is accessory to that. So this is modeled after Tip City. We do recognize that it is a large change, but it's something we certainly wanted to propose.
So is that language correct then? Because it's in the prohibited uses, it's automobile fuel dispensing station, only prohibited as primary use. Isn't that the
Yeah.
opposite of what you just said?
No, so it's prohibited as a primary use. It would be permitted as an accessory use to a large-scale retail use that's 50,000 square feet.
Okay.
So the accessory uses are in the chapter 4, and that has a table similar to that. It's a good question. To go back to your prohibited use question, I do want to clarify for everyone, that list that is above the table means that it's prohibited as a primary use throughout the city. It's not like one zoning district or another. That's actually not in the table, it's above the table. We also put dimensional standards into a table format. Same kind of thing, it makes it just so much easier to use. The graphics, these can be really helpful. These are just examples of some of the graphics. We have someone in our office that's a graphic expert, and I think she's done a great job with these. They've really been tailored here for Troy, so we're really proud of those. But that just makes it, for some people, it's just so much easier to see that, than to read it in text. So group homes. That is an issue that we've worked through. So there is what's called a reasonable accommodation standard via federal law, and we've adopted this concept. The city of Dayton has moved to doing this, and so I've taken a long look at their ordinance. And so I'm seeing a lot of communities in your area try to think through that. So, we have to be very cognizant of federal and state law with these issues, but we do have sections for those group homes, and we'd like for you to take a look at those. As I mentioned before, the tables for the accessory and temporary uses, those are in here as well. And then we have each type of accessory use has regulations just like the primary use. Same thing with the temporary uses. We have those in the table, and then we have the standards. So I'm going to turn it back over to Matt. He's going to talk a little bit more about the close-knit factor, and that is something that's, as he mentioned, is very unique for this code, or for this, yeah.
Yep. Thank you, David. I think going back to the comp plan, there was this idea of close-knit kind of community, close-knit, just folks socializing. We didn't want to lose that as we develop. And so we'd put some direction in the comp plan from a policy perspective what that means. In the zoning code, or excuse me, the UDC itself, now we could start to see how that turns into something that is measurable, essentially. So what it is there was kind of a number assigned to each character class in the comprehensive plan, 1 through 5, and each one meant it could impact the close-knit community presence if there wasn't something at least considered as it gets developed. I think new single dwelling unit developments on the outskirts of town are a great example of, they're not near the existing parks, they're not near downtown, they might not be as connected via trails, sidewalks, other physical connections. So and it was lucky that we started working on the Parks and Rec Master Plan at the same time, because we started to see where the densities of amenities were and where they weren't. And so when we looked at both efforts together, we started to realize, hey, if we want to encourage that same community feeling, there's things that need to be done in each new community, whether it be a commercial development or residential development, that help create that close-knit feeling. And so these are ideas to do that, whether it be trail connections, parks within the new development, things that encourage the close-knit factor. And so what you see here is there's kind of a weighted scale based on zoning district, how many of these, what we call offsets, are needed to be provided. And on the right side of the slide, you see here's types of offsets that a developer could install that help offset that we don't want to, is this just another community or is it part of Troy? And so these are the lists that we came up with. A lot of them are very park-centric. I think as new developments come in, we need new open space. We need new trail connections. I think, especially when we looked at the park plan, we know staffing is tight in the Parks and Rec department, so we wanted to create ways to help encourage developers to do these things that we've come to know in Troy and we love in Troy, so that they're still part of the community and we're still creating those ways to connect socially. And so that's really what this is all about. It's taking that concept from the comprehensive plan and connecting that to these offsets and they don't have to do all these. Essentially, if you see on the right side of the slide where it says 1, in your zoning district, you're required to do 1 offset. You pick something from this list, or you could pick something unique. You come up with your own idea, present it to the Plan Commission, and say, here's what we're doing to make sure that this community becomes part of Troy, this new development. If you're required to do 2, there's a list that you could do 2 offsets or even 3. None of this is prescriptive. The idea here is to get creative, have developers pick from this list or come up with their own idea to create that close-knit factor, that impact. And so we didn't want to just say, hey, here's a list of projects, here's a list of things that you could do. We've defined standards for each one of those offsets. This is an example in terms of what we would consider a multi-purpose trail along the public frontage. Another thing we heard loud and clear in that comprehensive plan is we want more complete street-like connections, we want more trails, we want to be able to get through the community in alternate modes of transportation. And so essentially this is one we wanted to highlight because we really think this is something that's important to the community, and this is a way to help achieve that. Developer puts in a new community, they should be looking to provide that connection along the frontage of their development, not just internal sidewalks. And so those are the types of things we're trying to encourage with this close-knit factor offset, making sure the new development is part of Troy, not just another new development with its own little name and its own little monument sign. And so this is a new concept for us.
Yeah.
This is it's probably a good time to pause and maybe see if there's any
I did have a
questions.
question on this, because we offer there's a waiver, a close-knit waiver factor, is that an option? It says, close-knit factor offsets may be waived by the administrator. Could you clarify who the administrator is?
The development code administrator is our city manager,
Okay.
Patrick, or his designee. That is how development code administrator.
So that wouldn't go to city or planning commission or anything like that? It would just, you guys would make that
is
decision?
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's a series of requirements that you'd have to basically justify that. Think of it like a variance request.
Yep.
There might be something unique to a parcel, or maybe it's a really small parcel, like, it's a half an acre subdivision. It might not make sense to have to do this. So that's like another one of those fail-safes, just to make sure we're not arbitrarily requiring things that aren't really feasible for smaller developments, or let's say it's encumbered by 50% wetlands. There's things like that do come up, and so we try to account for that with that standard. But great question. Any thoughts, comments, questions? I know this is a new concept it's new for us, it's new for everybody, so I want to make sure I pause there. All right, with that, I will bring back up David.
Yeah. So thanks, Matt. Continuing with the table format, we have each land use connected to a parking requirement, and what you'll notice is that there are reductions in the parking requirements. Matt did a great job of explaining the reasoning behind that. We also have what's called stacking requirements, which is basically the cars lining up. Of course, the one that always gets talked about is the Chick-fil-A. But basically any type of fast food restaurant, how the cars get lined up and stacked. Just a few more examples of the graphics that we've got. We do have landscaping and buffering and screening standards. This was an area, the standards for that section, we spent a good bit of time with our advisory committee, because a lot of that can really vary community to community as to how large or how substantial landscaping standards should be. So we gave them specific questions, and we took their feedback and put that directly into the code. Then we go into site standards. This is a large chapter. The signs is probably the biggest portion of that. So the way we do this is up front, again, another table, it says whether it's permitted in that district or not permitted, and then the sign types that are on the left side, left column. And so from there, it goes into what the different sign types are, and then it has specific requirements from that. I won't go through all of that. but it is an important part of the code for your review. There's also an outdoor lighting section that talks about how bright lights can be and the cutoffs and all of that stuff. And then there's also a noise section about what zoning districts per decibel or the noise standards. We also have the environmental management section. I won't go through all of that right now. I know the city engineer is still looking at a few things, particularly as it relates to the stormwater management standards. But most of what is in your current code has been brought over on that. There just needs to be some fine-tuning that needs to be done from your city engineer. Subdivision design, of course, subdivision is one of the key ordinances that we put together with this. This gives you a list of all the different things that are here. A lot of times we get questions about, well, what is in the subregs versus what is like a construction document for the actual streets or whatever. If it's just length, width, the basic requirements, that gets put into the subdivision regulations. We leave the other like design specs outside of this. But you can see all of the different sections. Again, for time reasons, I won't go through all of it, but I'm happy to take any questions, either at this meeting or future meetings, to discuss that. Again, this is pretty typical where a lot of times we do have some standards that are based on the street type. So, each city has a functional street classification map, whether that's an arterial or collector or local street, and then that standard will vary based upon what type of street that is. Then when we get into the administrative bodies, and then we get into the permits and the procedures. The administrative bodies really talk about kind of what each group does, whether it's the Board of Zoning Appeals, whether it's Planning Commission, those groups. The permits and procedures are the nuts and bolts of what someone who is an applicant is going to be looking at, and they're going to have to follow so that they can get their application permitted or not permitted. Now you notice the red lines are in here. This is one good example of one that actually from when we sent out the code previously to you, we noticed that we needed a little tweak. So again, this is a way of just kind of, I thought we'd show this slide as a way to say that we are keeping track of every little change from here on out, and that's kind of how it'll look. Now, it may not be actually in red, because Microsoft Word sometimes when you use, like if I make the change, it might be in red, and then Matt goes back and uses it, now it's in blue. Austin makes it, it's green, but we use the term red line. But basically any small edit is going to be shown for you as we go through this process. With that, I'm going to turn it back to Matt. He's going to go through the last few sections.
Thank you, David. So some of the more technical pieces, David mentioned the way we structure the zoning or the UDC is to have some more the technical things that folks don't refer to as frequently towards the end. Nonconformities are all about situations where maybe something that currently exists, something happens to it, or the rules change. What can basically be done with something that already exists, and now maybe we have a different setback requirement, or sign sizes have changed, those sorts of things. I think the common term for this, most people recognize, is grandfathered. I was grandfathered in because of X, Y, and Z. And the proper term for that is nonconformity. And so this is one of those sections I know Tim mentioned we're still tweaking, still working through. But essentially, if your lot's too small now to the current zoning ordinance, but it existed before the current rules were put in place, you're still allowed to use that as a residential lot. It's still, you could have your house there, all those things, because it was done before the current code. So that's what we call non-conforming. The situation that comes up probably most frequently is, what if my house burns down? Well, if it's still zoned residential, you could rebuild your house. But let's say it was zoned commercial for some reason, and in between, what happens in that situation, the way it's written is typically if it's burned down more than 50%, then you have to switch uses, and now it's a commercial property. So all those types of situations, all those things that do come up, this chapter is trying to basically encapsulate all those things, so you have direction to give property owners in those events. Enforcement, this is about making sure that all the things that we do in the code are actually done out in the real world, whether it be folks going out, enforcing these things, whether it be sign violations, zoning violations, people using properties in means that they're not zoned for, stop work orders, notices. That's all documented in this section so Austin and his team have the ability to go out there and do the things they need to do when folks, unfortunately, aren't doing the things they're supposed to do. So that's all basically spelled out in this chapter. And finally, rules of interpretation and definitions. This is that nitty-gritty stuff, all the definitions. We mentioned every use category that is in the current UDC gets a definition, street gets a definition, sign gets a definition, everything gets a definition to make sure that you can look at the code and say, okay, I know exactly what this means and why it's using it. We define public streets, private streets, alleys, you name it. Definitions, probably a more significant section of the UDC than we're used to, and that's on purpose, because I've been in a situation where, can you tell me what a haberdashery is? I couldn't either until I Googled it. Unfortunately, I didn't have a definition for haberdashery in my zoning code, so I didn't know how to define it. So we're trying to avoid those sort of misinterpretations when we do this. Rules of interpretation, that's more of a, if you're requiring parking spaces, you do a calculation based on building square footage is the best example. If it's, you're required 90.4 spots. Do you round up or round down? That section, rules of interpretation, lays out those types of things for you, so that essentially you know to round up or round down in certain situations, so that it's whatever decisions staff makes, whether doing the review or defensible, because there is a code. Things like how do we measure distance, what's the starting point, what's the end point, some of the administration pieces, other statutory changes, meaning what happens if Ohio state law changes, how does that impact our code? All those things are documented in what we call this rules of interpretation and definition section. With that, we'll talk about next steps a little bit. We're going to recommend a public hearing. Obviously, that's part of the process we'd like to see happen. Probably be in front of this body. We don't have a date certain for that yet. Certainly want to hear comments first, see how that goes. Then we'll have the Plan Commission comment period. We're talking about those red lines, changes, things that you folks see in there that we want to integrate into the final version before it gets adopted. That's all what's coming next. That's the point of the process we're in. So, and then eventually we'll be creating those red line versions of the draft to send back and keep working through those iterations till it's at the point where we all feel comfortable with adoption. And so with that, I think we're pretty close to an hour, which was what we promised. So happy to answer any questions between David and myself and staff. Yes, sir.
Matt, so as I've started going through this on the computer, I have the ability to write a note and highlight the section that I have a question about. Do you guys see that, or do I have to make sure that I point this out to you?
We're talking about the PDF document or the Word document, just so I'm certain.
They wouldn't see it. You have to, you can make the highlight changes, provide them to us, and we can get them over to American Structural Plan.
Okay, yeah. Eventually they will get to us to make the changes.
So if I save this document, because I don't want to print 400 pages, but...
Understood.
You're saving it on your computer.
Yeah,
I can save it and send it to you.
That's correct, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Save any changes for everybody. Save any comments, questions, thoughts you have. Get that to Austin and Tim, and we'll go ahead and make those changes and talk through them in our meetings before we come back.
So it sounds like we're going to have about a month to read through this?
At least, I'd say.
That's kind of what it
Yeah.
It's going to take a lot of time.
Well, the more you read, the more questions it raises too, just in clarification, I think.
Ed Westmeyer told me he has read it and memorized the entire document already, so unless you're Ed, then yes, you need a month.
I will say this, and actually a conversation with Jim sort of sparked it, is as you go through the code, make a note of a question you might have, and maybe have a list of those separate, because there's very often a time where that question actually gets answered further in the code, because as David said, it starts general and gets more detailed, and so there might be some questions that just get answered further in the document. So it's just kind of a good mindset.
I can already delete my what is a close-knit factor thing. I can write you down on that.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
One down. I love it. We're making progress.
Yeah, that and also definitions help a lot.
Yeah.
but I never saw so many definitions.
Yeah, I think, my standard way of reading a zoning code is I like to actually go through the definitions first, just so I get an idea of what I'm looking for term-wise. Learned that
Okay.
one the hard way, unfortunately.
Tim, how do you want to handle this by, we'll just go around the table?
Yeah, at first we did, we should probably address, Larry provided some comments to us, and we want to make sure that we addressed his comments. I think one or two of them were addressed here, but I know there's probably others. If you want to ask those, we can go ahead and give you
Well,
answers.
yeah, I didn't want to blindside staff, so I told them what my questions were going to be in advance. But as I understand, though, on manufactured home, you're going to rewrite that section?
For the prohibited uses list, yes, and it'll be, manufactured home and mobile homes will remain in the prohibited uses list, but we allow modular homes. And modular homes are basically like a unibuilt, where they're factory assembled to the HUD requirements.
And those would be
And-
are permitted?
Those would be
Correct.
permitted.
Okay.
Yep.
Skill-based amusement centers, what is that?
So picture a casino that is illegal and leaves games of chance to, it's kind of hard to explain, but it follows the Ohio Casino Control Commission, where they have games that you play, and then they offer you a prize. That prize could be monetary value, or it could be a stuffed animal, things like that. But they typically do not comply with the Ohio Casino Control Commission requirements for a Type 2 licensure, okay? So picture a casino small-scaled at games of chance, and I'm trying to be delicate, trying to explain all of this. I
But it
don't
would
think
not
it's very
prohibit-
favorable just to be
But
honest.
let's say a Chuck E. Cheese wanted to come in where the kids could win things.
That is a coin-operated amusement center, and that's a separate thing. That's not leaving games based on chance or skill.
Yeah.
We have had issues in the past. We've had about 4 or 5 in the last 5 years that we've had to go after and shut down.
Now, not that I am a fan of tattoos, but why not tattoo parlors?
When we looked at how we've been dealing with it for 10, 20 years, it's that they were only permitted in the M2 light industrial district, okay? That doesn't make any sense. That's a very Euclidean zoning thought process to only put them in industrial. We really had 2 options. We could put them in the B2. If you look at where the B2 is located, we have really no available B2 land. So we thought, okay, we're starting to think the future of how are we going to acquire more land and what are the uses that we want there, and we did not think that tattoo parlors should be a part of that.
The other thing we separated from the current code is, I'm going to mess this up because I don't know, stenciling, I guess, what are the terminologies, micropigmentation? Those are allowed in salons as accessory uses where they're currently not allowed today. So those uses would be allowed in the proposed code to you, but the actual tattoo parlors would not.
Okay. Page 6, we talk about a 10-foot wide public street frontage for multi-purpose trail. Is that a bike trail or what?
Shared use path. Shared use path, yeah, like a bike trail. You could use it for walking, skateboarding,
And this may,
Riverside?
similar. Yeah.
this may not be addressed in the zoning code, but how are you going to address those so that they're in a GPS, they're not confused with streets? I mean, you hear cases of a semi going down a bike path.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
the GPS says
Yeah.
that's a street.
Well, a lot of those multi-use paths, the larger ones, they'll put in like bollards, like, that can be removable or that kind of thing. So basically a truck, like a bicycle can go through it, people who are walking go through it, but any kind of, actual automobile size cannot go through.
On page 7, I don't understand the comment, removal of maximum sign area for building signs, and that along with the next paragraph, it sounds like we're talking about billboards.
So it is not. Essentially what this is, in our current code, we allot signage based upon the frontage you have for building signs, which are signs attached to the building itself. So we'll use Ashley's Furniture, for example. So Ashley's Furniture, they may have frontage because they have frontage on the interstate, which is public right-of-way, and frontage on Town Park Drive, which is also right-of-way. But our current code, it caps them at 100 square feet. So they were like, well, when we come into Troy, if we get 1.5 times our frontage, we should have up to 200 square feet. But our code caps them at 100. So it removes that 100 cap because the frontage is already setting the determination of the signage, so it looks proportionate to the building. So we simply remove that, which does allow for more signage on a lot of our buildings. And this usually comes into play when we have strip centers, things of that nature that we've had issues with in the past, and that was done to eliminate those issues from reoccurring.
Okay. You've got on page 32 of the code, how to deal with the main streets, Main and Market Street. It seems rather vague in terms of, it sounds more like suggestions than requirements. Are you following?
Are you referring, the gateway overlay? Is this like the intersecting streets from Main? So we have actually already made a change to that, which we haven't provided to you because we just caught this. So the gateway overlay is intended to have basically architectural standards for things off of Main and Market streets. Only frontage on Main and Market streets. It does state in here in intersecting streets, which we have struck out. So it's strictly only on the Main and Market.
That would be
a lot.
How far down do you go? So yeah, it's strictly for Main and Market streets. Yep.
Okay, but who determines whether these standards need to be followed?
The Development Code Administrator would determine.
Based on the location.
Because the way it's worded sounds like these are suggestions, not requirements.
Well, it basically says pick two of the following, and then it gives options. So we didn't want to make it too extreme for a developer to force the design type, but we wanted to have a minimum baseline for our gateways in the city. So that's why we approach it as, let's give them options, but we keep these baseline character requirements.
And Patrick makes that decision?
Or designee, yep.
Signs. Do you need a sign permit for a garage sale?
You do not.
I didn't see the exception there.
Okay.
So I think that's 1105.05C11. It talks about in the code. It talks about temporary signs, which would be garage sale signs, and it just states that they have to be durable and then secured into the ground safely or onto a structure. Those are the requirements for garage sale signs. So no permit would be needed, but they would have to be secured onto a structure or in the ground.
Okay. Pages 246, 247, K2 says that in the event that the Planning Commission finds a situation, the Planning Commission shall notify the Development Code Administrator. This seems like a reversal of roles here.
Well, Patrick wouldn't give us another zoning inspector, so we thought we'd have you guys help us out with our jobs. No, that is not the case. Actually, that language is the exact same language we currently have in our code, but we can look into that. If that's an issue, we can certainly make a change to that.
It's really, if you guys see something, you could communicate it to us. That's what we were thinking.
Okay. That's what I had.
Who's going down the line?
Yep.
Is that
You're
it?
up next.
We talked about prohibited uses. I had a question on that. Everybody's favorite topic, data centers. Paraphrasing here, we called out size, distance, and buffer is called out. However, like for example, an item like JJ, and this is Chapter 1103, Primary Use Standards. The solar energy systems include a decommissioning plan and financial considerations as well as noise decimal requirements, but none of that is outlined for a data center. It just seems like it's a little light on what that would be, and
Fair
it doesn't
point.
seem like there's an exit strategy. It looks like there's more around some other items, but not around data centers.
Have you seen decommissioning plans added as use-specific standards for data centers?
I have for those types of uses. For data centers, I mean, we see that a lot for wind and
Yeah, we have it at solar energy systems
Yeah.
is where I'm pulling from.
That's where we typically see it, wind and solar. Data centers, we can look into that. We'll have to look into that one as to whether there needs to be
Yeah.
decommissioning or not.
In all honesty, that type of use is so new, a lot of
Sure.
standards are still
Yeah.
being developed
Yeah.
around those.
Yeah.
And that comes with a building too, which is a little different.
In full honesty, I'm kind of comparing that to what's outlined for some of those other items, right? And I just thought that it was more robust with a couple other items, including tree houses, I thought had more items described in it than than data centers.
But we can always do some research and see what current best practices
Okay.
are to try to answer that.
Just a thought. Nothing, I kind of read through the common open space parkland fees in lieu of, that all made sense based off of kind of some of the conversations we had. It did state the planning commission may agree to accept open space in lieu of public parkland and fees in lieu of. Is that after the recommendation from the park board, or is that going straight now? Is that changing that to go straight to the planning commission, or is it, because typically that go to the park board and then kick up to the planning
Yeah,
commission? It didn't outline that, it just said planning commission, so I didn't.
Yeah, we currently go to the park board, and then ultimately planning commission makes that decision. We took that same language and sent it to park board, and leaving that planning commission ultimately with that main authority, because per the Ohio Revised Code, it determines that the planning commission is the plating authority, right? So that's why it's worded that way.
Okay. Close-knit factor we discussed, and that rolls up to Patrick then, to make the waiver considerations for the close-knit? Is what we
The
decided?
Development Code Administrator, yep.
Is that how it needs to be, or is that, is that the final say-all on that? Is that, or does that go to planning commission?
Can you give me a section number? if you don't-
It is section, I have 1109-04 under administrative applications. It's item F, it's the waiver for close-knit factor.
I will say to that, that's a policy decision, and that is what I understand. If you, the planning commission, feel that needs to come to you, I don't see that there would be any reason in making a change
Yes.
to that.
No, I love the close-knit factor. I just, a waiver on a close-knit going to one person
Yeah.
versus an entire commission, I think it just prompts more communication. I mean, he's on the planning commission anyway, so.
Yeah, also, if I were in Patrick's position, Development Code Administrator, I wouldn't want that. I would want it to go to a public body. So I think that's a very good comment. That's something we can change.
Yeah.
I see no reason we can't change that.
Yeah, kind of in line with that too, in the, chapter 1102, it talks about somewhat discretionary whether Development Code Administrator refers anything to Planning Commission. And that's, that became, I think it's just opening up the door for a lot of contentious type activities.
Yeah, I will say that the reason we crafted it the way we did initially was we want those to only really be used in very cut and dry situations, as opposed to it being a conversation piece.
Sure.
So that because we feel strongly enough about that as a community, we want those improvements installed. So we really want to be in very specific situations where the topography just doesn't allow it or something like that.
Gotcha.
But, I mean, those same standards can apply to, a planning commission review too, if that's the way we want to go with it.
Yeah, I'm not saying another greedy aspect. We want to see everything, but at the same token, it's, you want to make sure it's transparent as heck.
Those are my big call-outs. I've taken notes, and we'll keep adding to the list.
Oh, perfect.
I'm still digesting. I've gone through quite a bit, but I'm still
Sure.
digesting it, so I don't have any immediate comment.
Perfectly understandable.
We'll have some
Yeah.
next time.
I have nothing. You lost me at Chick-fil-A parking.
Because we're getting close to dinner time.
I have read all 400 pages, but obviously I have to look at it again.
even though I'm just getting started with this, I did do some skipping around and testing making comments and highlighting. I had a question about occupancy code or permits. And it says that Miami County building people you get your occupancy permit from them. I thought the city had an occupancy.
We do, and you'll see a track change in the permits and procedures table that says that we've changed the terminology because it was very confusing current day to have both a zoning occupancy and a Miami County Building Department occupancy. So what would happen is people would come through us, or they wouldn't come through us, and they'd just go through the county. And they did not realize that we both require it. So we changed the name, and we did make those track changes, and that is coming.
Okay, so that's just one thing I had. I'm like Ed, I'm still just digesting. and
Sure,
doing it.
absolutely.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna transcribe mine and get them to you in one batch, I think probably. One question that came up, in this, I'm just gonna use this as an example. I think in gas stations, or wherever you guys call it now, fuel dispensing facilities, it had the statement that it had to be located like 300 feet from child care centers. Now, if a child care center comes in and wants to build well, there is one across the street from Kroger's.
Yeah. So
Now, does it work both ways, or is it a matter of the gas station can't put theirs in, but the child care can?
it only applies, so the use-specific standards only apply to that use. So if a child care comes in, we're not going to apply the use-specific standards for a gas station to the child care.
Okay, or any other, I mean,
Yeah,
that was just an example.
Just an example,
One of the-
yes.
So it doesn't work in reverse?
It doesn't work in the reverse. That's
Okay.
correct.
So they can shoot themselves in the foot rather than the city allowed them to do it. Okay. The other one was, talking about distances. Data center, it just happens to be in the one I put a note on there. Says it has to be 1,000 feet from a hospital, rehab, care, parks, recreation facility, da-da-da. Is that from the facility, or is that from the property?
It'd be how it would, it's not clarified in there, in that section?
No, but
Okay.
there are some subsequent ones where I noticed it does clarify
Okay.
so many feet from the nearest property line, or, it tells how to measure those properties.
A lot of times, we do have a section that says if it's not specifically stated, this is how it is measured. We need to go back and look to see if we have that catch-all here. But that's a great comment that we can dig into the weeds on.
Yeah, particularly like I think of like up there by where Bruns is developing along by the hospital. The hospital's land is one thing, but the buildings are another.
Mm-hmm.
I would add, maybe do you have a preference on which one for like the data center section, just so we know?
I think for any of them, I like the property line measurement.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just simple. I mean, I suppose at that point, if it's like the hospital has a 2,000-foot buffer, okay, I would assume that can go to BZA for maybe locating closer. I would think there'd be a remedy.
Something eligible for a variance request.
But at least it would be distinctive,
Yeah. Yeah, there's no right or wrong answer, it's really what your preference is, that's why I asked. The property line's probably a little easier, because then you don't have to worry about accessory uses and some of those other things, so.
And most commercial have meets and bounds, right, for the property line.
Yeah.
It'd be hard to describe in a meets and bounds a structure.
Yep.
And then wind farms, those are prohibited?
They are permitted as an accessory use to the agricultural district,
Yeah,
but as a principally permitted use, they are prohibited.
right, okay. Yeah, I don't have an opinion on it necessarily, I just want to make sure I was clear on that. And then accessory dwelling units, we talked about that a little beforehand. They were not in the code before, but now they are, right?
Yeah, one of the questions I get on, I typically get on accessory dwelling unit is, how does that differ from a duplex? So some of you may be wondering that. A duplex is where the two sides of the units are, they don't have to be exactly the same square footage, but they're close. And typically, you're looking from the street at the house, and you will see two doors. An accessory dwelling unit actually will hide the door. It'll be on the side. So when you're walking down the street, it just feels like a single dwelling unit neighborhood. But it actually has a kitchen unit. It has, its own bathroom. It's a full dwelling, like separate dwelling unit.
And it requires the owner to reside there as well. That is the difference between a duplex and the ADU.
Yeah, and then, I know there's size restrictions too. But I think size restrictions for what, both the attached and unattached, right? Yeah. I think we used to call those mother-in-law.
Yeah, that's the colloquial term, mother-in-law suite, yeah. You're correct. Excuse me.
And I haven't hit all the definitions. How does that relate to rentals and multi-family zoning issues? I mean, obviously, the mother-in-law dies, now you're going to rent it out to some college student. Is that appropriate?
Well, I think that the real key point here is there's a clear delineation between a duplex and an ADU, the way we've added standards for it, because the ADU requires that the property owner reside there.
Right.
So, in one of the units.
Yeah, I think what his question is what happens when someone passes away, because in a lot of cases that's what it is, the mother-in-law suite, and they want to rent it out. That can become an enforcement. That can become an enforcement issue, and I think that's kind of what you're getting at.
Yeah, and I don't have an opinion about it, whether it should or shouldn't be. It's just
Essentially, the person who owns
just
the
having to
property
deal with it. Yeah.
Because now the renter's still there, but it would have to get sold as any sale would, and we'd still require somebody that owns the property to live on there. So David just mentioned it's an enforcement issue. We got to make, sometimes you don't know about these things, so you know about them. But that would be.
That's why we have a law director.
Yeah, but they're saying the person who owns the building dies.
Just some thoughts.
Then you got a renter. Then you got to sell it. That's what they're saying. I don't think that's what he said.
Yeah, and then on the fencing, I think this only came up, we had an experience with that Kroger store where we wanted a higher fence. I think it was a 10-foot fence.
God, what if it's the mother-in-law?
I think they had to go through the BZA. For screening, they talk about a fence has to be a screening fence. It has to be at least 6 foot high, but it's somewhere else, I think it only talks about maximum is 6'2". Is there a way that can be increased? Because anymore, like semi trucks, hell, they're 14 foot up in the air, and sometimes the lights are up to so bright, their 6 foot fence doesn't stop anything.
No, that's a very good point. I mean, we have had codes where we increased that height pretty substantially.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see it increased to where you have discretion to what's applicable.
I would actually recommend that we would look at like a natural vegetation and berm more so than a higher fence, because
or berm and a fence.
Berm and a fence combined.
Yeah.
Less like Fort Knox-ish,
Well, most fences won't hold up
barbed wire
in the wind either.
Yeah,
Is there a difference between business versus residential, where those go?
In terms of fencing?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've defined those as separate for those types of separate situations. I don't think we'd want a 14-foot fence in residential.
Well, that's what I was picturing in my head.
So, we define those so that's something.
Most of these are just minor things, I think. Are there any other questions that people have right now offhand.
And this is not your own chance to ask.
No. No, we're gonna have additional meetings. Okay, switching to that additional meetings, I appreciate these folks, and I want to do is make sure, if you think of anything for these folks, 'cause we probably won't have them at our subsequent meetings until towards the end of when, we have a planning commission or we get ready to make recommendations. So I would say probably if we're gonna meet 2 or 3 times between now and the point where we have a hearing, that they would not be in attendance, but we'd be somehow communicating either through staff, or we even talked about setting up like a Zoom meeting, with a couple of them attending if we need be. But getting back to our future meetings, what does your schedules look like now for planning these out in the future? And I'm going to go first. I know I'm going to be gone. I will not be here on the 8th of June.
June?
In July.
Excuse me, July. Oh, no. I'm sorry, July. And I will not be here the week of August 12th. But we can either schedule special meetings or pick them up with our regular meetings.
So our next scheduled meeting is next Wednesday, the 24th?
Correct.
Yes.
Is it the intent to continue this in that meeting, you think, too, or, because we'll have normal business to...
We don't have anything.
Well,
for
fortunately, we don't have any applications for that next meeting.
Okay.
So
Okay.
we would have the entire time to talk about anything you would see
And,
with this.
and when we do this, we've already traversed an hour and a half. To me, that's a long time. I mean, if we just shoot for, a 1-hour work session next week, then we're all out of here at 4:30, and I'll find that a lot more appeasing than just carrying on until we all collapse.
One thing I will recommend is, if you have items that are applications and you're going to do some discussion, that you put the discussion at the end, just because sometimes the discussion can draw out and it's difficult for the applicants.
Yes, definitely. I appreciate that. So,
Would it be better to send out an email with some possible dates that we could all respond to?
Well, we have our regular meeting dates, so,
I'm okay. It would be nice if we could stay within our meeting dates.
yeah.
Because we already have them blocked out, and then,
True.
and if we have to deviate from that, I know some people are gone the next meeting, but going into July and August, if we can stay maybe within that range. Again,
And try to keep it to our regular,
at least close to that. I think I'm out on the 12th of August, but if we send out those meeting dates and then pick from there, I think that'd be a
yeah,
start.
well, and the other thing is, I know we're going to have trouble having everybody at each meeting, but the meetings would still be taped.
Let's say if we have a quorum and then we can send in our comments, if we're not available to attend, I think that'd still be just.
Yeah, send the comments in, plus it is available to review, but we're also going to have subsequent meetings where we can pick up if there's, because the way I envision this is we're going to have questions. I don't expect them to be totally prepared for, a cold cock question.
Honestly, I looked at the document, but if you're doing red line, it would have been a lot easier for me to have looked through that document. I mean, it was difficult to read all these different codes and try to ascertain what the old was and what the new is.
Oh, I know.
So that, I had no questions.
There's so much new, it would have been, like, as David talked about,
I
all
was
red.
overwhelmed.
So one of the things I do want to bring up is we still have some policy questions that we are going through that we would probably like to bring up at next week's meeting, just to touch on some of those items that are still hanging out there. So you'll probably get a supplemental draft, a red line draft with some changes that we have, I'm guessing next week, and then we might have ahead of time, here's a list of some policy things we want to focus on. So at that meeting, we can nail down those comments, and then to keep proceeding on with this process.
Yeah,
Just-
that would
just so
be
you know.
helpful if you could provide those.
Mhm.
And then we're not going to take any action on it, so it's not a matter that people can't catch up either. And even those couple of days I'm going to be gone, if I'm the only one gone, there's no reason it can't just continue.
Can't we just include in our next, just each meeting that we have, an hour on top of whatever our session's gonna have, and then
Yeah.
That works out.
Yeah, we don't have to say officially, but I mean, you want to keep it less than an hour.
I mean, that, just keep our regular meetings, that way we're not having to really scatter through our calendars, because I've already blocked out our,
Yeah, I agree,
Second, fourth.
I agree.
Are you and I the only one that won't be here next week? Do they have
Yeah.
a forum?
No, I will be here next week.
I'll be here.
Week
Okay,
after.
am I the only one? So you have a quorum.
I'm not here. Is Patrick here next week?
as far as I know.
That is something that a lot of our clients will do, is that they'll keep their regular schedule, particularly if it's, forgive me, do you meet monthly or is it biweekly?
Bi-weekly.
Biweekly, yeah, so in your case, the biweekly meetings and then at the end of the agenda, I mean, it depends upon how much is on the agenda, obviously, but you kind of keep a time limit of a 2-hour meeting. If the applications take 30 minutes, then you could discuss at max an hour and a half. That is a pretty typical pattern that we see.
Yeah, so to clarify,
Second and fourth Wednesdays.
yeah, to say, to clarify, we meet the second, fourth Wednesday of each month, and then as we get comments coming in, we can always address that at one of the future meetings, saying if we need a special meeting, at that point in time, we can nail down the calendars. At this point, I think we move forward with the plan we have in place. We meet next week, we bring some policy questions, we nail those out, and then get you guys a supplemental draft of the code, and then move forward at that point.
So Tim, just so I understand what you're suggesting there, is we would or would not provide a red line draft before the next meeting? Or are you going to wait
I
for the
think
next
we nail those policy questions down, so then we can give them a red line draft.
before the next meeting?
Well, I'm thinking after their comments for the next meeting.
Oh, okay.
Then
So-
they'll have that
yeah.
for
I can't ask questions
the second
before
meeting,
then.
yeah.
All those
Okay.
comments you get next week.
Got it.
Correct, because we have comments here today that we want to change, so we might as well incorporate these changes with the next meeting's change, and then give you one draft instead of keep coming with supplemental information.
We wouldn't need a quorum next time because we're not making any decisions.
And that's a great,
Unless there are other items.
point, and that is, that does happen where, you know, you keep the same meeting date, but maybe you don't have a quorum, but you can use that for discussion.
And then we can watch the video and kind of catch up on.
Yep.
Yeah, and that happens too. We have clients.
Well, I think, again, we can probably take a little bit of time at the beginning of each subsequent meeting and review where we're at, because there'll be updates, I think, that Joey brings to us. But if we do have a meeting scheduled, you know, if there's regular business, and we don't have a quorum for some, you know, somebody's ill or whatever, we can still discuss this, just not take any action, so.
so we're saying we'll still keep our second and fourth meetings, we'll include a X time frame, an hour, hour and a half after our regular meeting
Right.
activities
Yeah.
to discuss it until we're done, or,
Yes.
you know, until we get it finalized. That makes the most sense.
That's a good plan.
Yeah, I think that would be.
That's already on your
See,
schedule.
We can always change that too, if we need to, you know, make
I
an
I
adjustment.
think that's the best one we can.
I want my red
Consistent.
line.
Does that sound like it meets, your approval?
Good.
Okay.
I want to muddy the waters, I will be at Boy Scout camp next week, so I'll be sweating with my son getting their badges.
We won't be here.
Well, I think, you know, you've done your part for now. You've given us a lot to chew off on, so we need to get ourselves, you know.
And we can
Yeah.
submit things to you guys.
Certainly, we will be in contact with them, yes. They're not done just yet, so.
Yeah.
And if anybody has any questions or comments, or, you know, I'm available. You can feel free to contact me.
Perfect. Okay, we'd like to open it up for comments and questions from the public. So we just asked to try to keep them brief and pretty much on point. I mean, we may not be able to give you an answer yet.
I'm just,
Hi,
I can't believe.
you need my name and
Yeah,
address?
name and address.
Steve Hendrickson, 975 Dickerson Drive. One of the things that concerns me is how everybody's going to have an up-to-date version of what's going on. This is going to be an iterative process. You're going to make changes, you're going to have red lines, you're going to have blue lines, purple lines, I don't know how many other colors you got. But is there a place that everyone can go to and say, oh, this is the latest? Or are we all going to be on different versions? We all been to the meeting and say, oh, this is brought up, and then we say, oh, we already decided to change that. So I guess the question is, where is everybody gonna go to find out? The public, the council? I mean, we all been to meetings where nobody, it's kind of comical, to say the least.
I think
Yeah.
we'll be sending our comments to Tim. Tim will send us the latest.
Well,
No,
I
don't
think
wanna talk
what
to
he's...
Tim. I wanna go and look at it and read it. I don't need anybody else.
I think anytime we submit a supplemental information to the planning commission, it is posted online on our website, and that way there's one spot where everybody would have the same documentation that they're reviewing all the same time. I think that's your question. I think that's what we can do.
But that won't be until we have a final.
No, as it goes along, you make changes, just
As we-
update it.
Yes, we will, the supplemental information would be information that we've made changes, we will hand to you and post online, so everybody knows what the changes are at that point in time. And then that will be evolving, because it's a fluid document. So, the next one we have will incorporate the policies from the next meeting, the comments from today, and then in another 2 weeks at the next meeting, we may have more changes. But each time we provide that to you, we will post online, so everybody's on the same...
Date the version that you're posting?
We certainly will, yes.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
then,
and your comment's well taken. I mean, this is part of that issue of being transparent. You'll have to, we don't know what's gonna, in 2 weeks, we don't know what's gonna be before.
oh, of course not.
And so we're just gonna have to work through, and as we proceed, take those steps, just make it available.
Well, and if individually you send things to Tim, and there's not gonna be a committee meeting on what we're gonna send to Tim, right? So I think what you said is we're gonna have a place to go to, that everybody can go to, that's gonna have the latest version.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, now the other thing is, we talked about the red line things, and we said, oh, we gotta do different colors. One of the things you could do as an engineer is say Rev A, Rev B, Red C, can all be red, and only the latest revision would be listed, right?
Correct,
We don't
yep.
need a history of it. So that's one way you can keep track of whether it's been changed 8 times or 1 time,
Yes.
okay? I don't have any other comments to make other than good luck. I mean, well, no, I mean, everybody's gotta have the same information. It's gonna be chaos if you don't.
Mm-hmm.
You're
Agreed.
right. You're
Thank
right.
you.
But well taken, thank you, sir.
We were talking, sorry.
Are there any other comments or questions? I'll turn back to, is there any other further questions from the commission?
I want to comment on the consultants. You'll either be here or maybe even be able to call in, like
Yeah.
the WebEx or vice
Yes,
versa.
I mean, we need to make sure that the virtual link is available, but we're more than happy to call in virtually, and when this happens with other jurisdictions, a lot of times, you'll just bring me in at the end of the meeting, and then, I'm there for Q&A. I have found that when we're doing full presentations, it makes all the sense in the world to be here, but if it's just a question and answer, we can do that virtually and get all the information you need.
That's fine with me.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think as long as how do you want the information to be sent to Tim or to Austin? You probably only want one line of communication.
Yeah, I would probably suggest it go through Austin. He's
Okay.
been doing the art and soil work on our end, as well as David, so if you keep them consistently to him, we'll make sure that it gets vetted through to American Structure
If you
Point.
don't have his email, and make sure we get a card then from you before.
I'm pretty sure
Took
everyone
off.
has mine.
And then, but I think as long as we get the information to you at least a couple days before the upcoming meeting, then you can make the decision how, if the answers from you or answers from the consultant, it's on fine, as long as we get the right answer,
Yep.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Make a motion for adjournment then.
So move.
Second.
A motion is second for adjournment, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. We will see you next week.